So very exciting to see what both of these trainers decide to lean into as we get into this very first game. Francesco has them right on in the Iron Treads, which I think makes a perfect Pokemon versus this Rillaboom and Volcarona.
Unfortunately, though, Rillaboom will immediately turn off the electric terrain. Rillaboom leads into Miraidon teams are really nice because if Rillaboom lines up against Miraidon right at the start, you immediately can shut down that terrain. Then if Miraidon swaps in on the turn, if it wasn't led, you can easily Rillaboom, or Rillaboom the U-turn. U-turn the Rillaboom out and bring it back in later to again shut off that grassy terrain. No Quark Drive boost for Iron Treads just yet will be very important because getting those extra stats really helps it be a big threat in this metagame.
But you really want to look at both of these Pokemon trying to put some sort of pin onto the Volcarona. If you actually force it to Rastalize, it does have that Grass Terra, then you're going to be able to bring in something else like the Incineroar later that will be able to deal super effective damage. But you see this horsepower as well. And take a look at that Flame Body burns the Iron Treads. That is not good for this physical attacker. And now you're stuck with this choice band while the Volcarona has got this setup for +1 to the special attack and the special defense. And that defense boost is going to matter versus the Miraidon.
Insanely nice turn for Eric there. Despite the electric terrain immediately going away, the Volcarona did get to use its electric seed before Rillaboom was able to take that terrain away. So it took that high horsepower very well. Flame Buddy activating means you're going to take the next high horsepower even better. And of course, Quiver Dance means that you are a big threat to this Miraidon. And you should be outspeeding the Iron Treads as well. You threaten to 1-hit KO with Fiery Dance. It is Terra Bug on Iron Treads, so it cannot Terrestrialize away from that fire weakness. And I don't know that a whole lot on Francesco's team, other than the Incineroar, really wants to swap into a Fiery Dance, but an Incineroar swap here might be a little bit punishable as well.
Yeah, I mean, you still have something like the... I think just kind of any sort of damage here from the Volcarona is going to not be so bad. But you've got the Volt Switch actually going into the Rillaboom. That Assault Vest is so nice. There's two ways that this Miraidon really gets stopped here. And especially when you don't have that electric terrain active, you're not going to be doing nearly as much with these attacks from the Miraidon. But what does Francesco bring in? I think if you want to bring in the Terapagos here, you're kind of already behind the 8-ball a little bit. This Volcarona has one turn of setup, and you're going to need a little time to get this Terapagos going.
A much more defensive option here from Eric. We just see the Volcarona protect itself, which means it will guarantee a turn of grassy terrain recovery. Maybe he doesn't want to be taking an Electro Drift just yet. Even with that higher Quiver Dance boost and the electric terrain being gone, it still will do a good chunk of damage. And with this Volcarona, it doesn't have leftovers. You really want to be preserving that HP.
But a nice pivot here as well as, okay, there's a little bit of a critical hit there, meaning you're going to do a bit more damage than you would have with the U-turn, but it's still not going to be super important. As we get a chance to look at the Zamazenta coming in, I think this is where it's tough. Francesco's got to pick a target. You can only fake out one thing with this Incineroar, and this Zamazenta is going to be dealing super effective damage to either target.
That's a great point. You know, the Incineroar can fake out one thing, but if it doesn't fake out the Volcarona, then Volcarona gets off a Fiery Dance and probably gets a KO, if not another special attack boost. If you don't fake out the Zamazenta, it goes straight for that body press, and if you don't Terrestrialize the Incineroar, you just lose it right off the bat. So a great combination of offensive options here from Eric. The combination of Zamazenta and Volcarona hitting on either side of the spectrum show you've got a really strong physical attack in body press and a strong special attack in Fiery Dance.
We see the Iron Treads leave the field in favor of this Miraidon, at least coming back in and resetting the terrain. But because Eric pivoted out the Rillaboom, there's a really easy way for him to manually shut this off on the next turn. Incineroar chooses to fake out this Zamazenta as we just see the Giga Drain right now. And honestly, love that. Volcarona has boosts already. You just want to get some HP recovery with this Giga Drain so you can stay on the field even longer.
Also trying to cover for a water terrestrialization from that Incineroar. If the Incineroar didn't go for fake out and instead tried to go for a terrestrialization to dodge the super effective damage from body press, you would have been able to do a ton of damage to it, probably still KO it with a combination of body press and Giga Drain. Instead, you do get a little bit of recovery there from Volcarona, which is nice because that grassy terrain does go away. That passive recovery is gone until the Rillaboom comes back on the field. But I don't expect that to take too long because Rillaboom is a really big part of shutting down this Miraidon. Although, if you do that, you're either swapping out of your Quiver Dance boost or your Dauntless Shield boost, which you can't recover later in the game.
But I don't know how much the Dauntless Shield boost actually matters now that you've kind of seen not only like the Iron Treads get burned, but you're also really looking at this Volcarona just being that setup piece for later on in the game. We do see the electric terrestrialization committed onto this Miraidon. But if you do remove the terrain here, I mean, that is going to be a big deal later. There is no swap, though, so Miraidon gets a chance to stay here with this Electric Terra as Volcarona gets a free Quiver Dance boost. So +2 now to that special defense as Miraidon lands an Electro Drift. Electro Drift running straight into that Zamazenta, and it is going to be so close to the knockout, but not quite enough. Zamazenta gets to go for the body press as it survives that so critically, and they're gonna knock each other out here. Rocky out of recoil, and Cineroar goes down to the body press. And I think you're okay with that now if you're Eric. Now you get to bring in the Rillaboom.
Absolutely, very much okay with that if you're Eric. That's a massive survival of the Zamazenta. If it wasn't able to survive that Electro Drift, you're not getting that body press off. The Incineroar is not removed from the game, which is a really big stop to this Volcarona. Even if you can't damage it too much thanks to that Electric Seed, is one of the few things that will resist both the Fiery Dance and the Giga Drain from Volcarona, especially with Rillaboom coming out now. Giga Drain is powered up even further thanks to that grassy terrain. Sinistcha will be the 4th Pokemon for Francesco. We'll get a little bit of a hospitality boost to that Miraidon. Heal it right back up to full HP there. But now that Miraidon has also terrestrialized into that electric type, it no longer resists the Fiery Dance and Giga Drain, so necessary for the offense into that Zamazenta. Would have been very worth it, I think, if it was able to KO with Electro Drift. But now you're in such a buffer position because the Sinistcha, while it does have a Focus Sash, will be able to survive at least one more attack. It doesn't have a whole lot to do after that.
I mean, there's still an Assault Vest in play, but you have the ability to double into it, and then I think at that point doesn't matter because the Rillaboom is going to be there to do that physical damage as well to bypass an item like that. And there's still that poor Iron Treads in the back nursing its burn that is waiting to come back out. But
especially when you consider this Volcarona is Terra Grass, you're going to be able to ignore the Rage Powder. That's kind of the one thing left that Sinistcha had to do for the rest of the game, and it might just be moot.
Well, the Iron Treads is going to make a reappearance here, and there is that terrestrialization, so you're absolutely right. It's so free to be able to go for this as well, because you're going to be resisting the Miraidon damage as well as bypassing that Rage Powder. There's a lot of different reasons why this Grass Terra is going to be so effective for this Volcarona. Sinistcha goes for the Protect, though, so we're going to see Eric really take a commanding lead after this. Volcarona going into the Iron Treads that just switched in. It's just a knockout by itself. Rillaboom doesn't get to do anything on this turn.
Rillaboom doesn't need to do anything on this turn. You got what you wanted from this turn. Francesco's now down to 2 Pokemon remaining. It makes a lot of sense to swap them right on out there. You want to be able to reset that electric terrain. But unfortunately, Eric does have a yet to be revealed 4th Pokemon, which I'm guessing we're going to get to see very soon because you want to be swapping out that Rillaboom so you can then reset the grassy terrain. I think as soon as grassy terrain goes back up, this game is as good as over in Eric's favor. It probably already is, to be quite honest, but that's just going to be the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, we kind of got a sneak peek of what's in the back there, and, you know, it's got some nice speed attached to it. That's all I'll say. But it is tough. I mean, now that this Volcarona is set up, it's so difficult to kind of see a world where Miraidon or Sinistcha actually have the ability to get enough special attack down into this Volcarona, bar something like a critical hit. Francesco's going to throw in the towel, and this game number 1 goes to Eric Rios after an incredible Volcarona setup to be able to take that first game.
Volcarona, a Pokemon that I don't know that I really had on my radar going into this event, but Eric has shown throughout the course of this tournament, both this morning and right now in this first game of Top 8, that it is a huge threat, especially into teams like this, where I think the damage into Volcarona is pretty heavily predicated on electric terrain being up, and Rillaboom is there to ruin those game plans right off the bat.
Oh, I mean, yeah, the burn right away, too, definitely didn't help things out here. But the Volcarona, I mean, like, the fact that you were able to get set up so quickly, you have this single target damage, and I think the reason why we actually saw Francesco bench the Terrapagos is you're really relying on things like Terra Starstorm. You've got the Zamazenta with the Wide Guard. We already called out the Ogerpon as well with Utah and Encore. And I think it was the right call for that first game for Francesco to actually bench the Terrapagos and think about another way to get through with that damage. But now, is this the time where you think, well, okay, maybe I should lead the Terrapagos. Maybe this is that time. I didn't see the Ogerpon. I might be able to get away with some of these Calm Mind boosts, similar to how Eric was able to lead out the game with Volcarona setup.
I think we could see it. If you're Francesco, I think you got to switch something up. They didn't really just bring the right Pokemon to be able to threaten this Volcarona heavily. I think especially after the immediate burn from Flame Body, a lot of your game plans fall apart right off the bat. Even if the Flame Body doesn't activate there, the Volcarona is already at +1 special attack and speed. You're going to be outspeeding that Iron Treads. I think it might have been the speed boost from Quark Drive, so at that point maybe you need 2 Quiver Dances to outspeed, but regardless, the Electric Seed defense boost we already saw was enough to turn that high horsepower into a 2-hit KO instead of or 3-hit KO rather, instead of a 2-hit KO. So you got to be a lot more careful about it, but Urshifu, one of the few things that can break your Volcarona pretty quickly.
Absolutely. You still have that Grass Terra, though, which is going to help you resist a lot of the Surging Strikes damage. But what happens there, if you have both of these Pokemon on the field and you threaten a resisted Surging Strikes, but a super effective Flare Blitz?
I mean, that's the point. You gotta worry about which terrestrialization you pick here. Of course, you do have the Fake Out advantage, Rillaboom being faster, but if you're gonna fake out the Urshifu, I think there's a very high likelihood Incineroar just fakes out the Volcarona in return and you're back to square one, except this time you don't have the option for that fake out. You could possibly go straight on the offense. A Giga Drain and Grassy Terrain might be enough for a KO on Urshifu here, and then you're kind of removing the one thing that has the 1-hit KO potential on Volcarona without terrestrializing. But that's a lot to go for on this first turn, and I'm not sure it's ever going to be worth it.
You have the ability to invest into removing that Volcarona right away, but Eric is starting to think a little bit more about that and what could potentially switch into its place to take either of those attacks. The pin looks good from Francesco, but Eric being able to switch in this Miraidon means that you can't really just deal with this Surging Strikes and Flare Blitz and consider that to be the option to get rid of the Volcarona. As you see the Surging Strikes now into the Miraidon, this is exactly what we were talking about. Miraidon taking that attack super well because of the resist, and despite the critical hits, will be enough of at a high enough elf pool that we're going to see this Incineroar also not really do too much.
U-turn will come through here targeting that Incineroar, not wanting to go for heavy offense right off the bat. Instead, this Miraidon swap I think is really good. You're going to be able to resist both the Surging Strikes and the Flare Blitz if those are the two moves that were thrown directly at that Volcarona, trying to cover for a possible terrestrialization. And of course, the Choice Scarf on your Miraidon will allow you to outspeed this Choice Scarf Urshifu later on.
Yeah, that's where the speed is going to be so important. But Francesco actually splits the difference, uses the Flare Blitz into the Zamazenta instead, and even though it's super effective, we do have that Dauntless Shield ability that's going to help boost up those defenses, making that not super bad.
We're now in a very similar spot to last game, though, where Giga Drain and Body Press threaten super effective damage with or without a terrestrialization into Incineroar. And we're seeing the same exact thing, this Incineroar being Terra Water. I'm sure it comes in handy in a lot of matchups, maybe Calyrex Ice Rider off the top of my head, but against this team that Eric Rios is running, it's not really helping you out at all. The combination of Body Press and either an Electric or Grass type move from either of these powerful Pokemon that Eric is packing is able to threaten this Incineroar very heavily, and you don't really have a whole lot that can swap into that either.
No, anything is not going to want to be on the receiving end of a Hadron Engine boosted move from this Miraidon. And we're going to see this Urshifu get out of dodge. It knows it's going to lose out on that Speed War, but maybe if there's one thing that could resist any of these attacks, it would be this Miraidon. But the Draco Meteor, what a good call! It's going to land a one-hit knockout onto that Miraidon for Francesco, and that might be it. For Eric is so far ahead now.
If this is Body Press 2, this is a massive turn for Eric. 2 huge KOs at once.
That is a double knockout on this turn, even though it took 2 Pokemon to do it. And so Francesco, only the Urshifu and this mystery 4th Pokemon left. And this is a wipeout here. Eric is dominating this game.
Iron Treads will be the 4th Pokemon for Francesco. Not too bad of a thing to have at your disposal. With the Quark Drive boost, it will be able to get its stats powered up a little bit. But the Incineroar still, not the Incineroar, the Rillaboom still looms in the back. The Grassy Terrain is going to be huge for Eric here to turn off Quark Drive to ensure that his Pokemon get a little bit of recovery against these 2 powerful Pokemon. And of course, they are both holding choice items. It's Choice Scarf Urshifu, Choice Band Iron Treads. The 2 attacks they select right now will be the only attacks they can use for the rest of this game.
There is a Protect available on the Zamazenta that can help you suss out what these 2 Pokemon are going to lock into. And you still have those defense offensive capabilities in the back. If you want to bring in that Rillaboom, it is a little counterintuitive to your own Miraidon, but it's not like you can't use that Rillaboom to switch into the Miraidon's place and take these attacks and figure out those choice item moves regardless.
That Draco Meteor was such a great selection. It ensured that if something swapped in, that maybe was able to take an electric type attack, like this Iron Treads, like the possible Sinistra, that you still got a bunch of damage out, and that put Eric so far ahead in this game too.
And this Water Terror is going to help out a lot as well. You're not going to be taking super effective damage from this high horsepower anymore. You resist something like the Ice Spinner, another Draco Meteor, and that still does so much damage into this Urshifu despite having dropped your special attack from the previous one. But the critical hit, Francesco does get a little bit of love going his way, but the fact that your Pokemon are so low HP regardless, is it going to be enough to get you back into the game?
I really don't think it is. Surging Strikes will come through here do very little damage to this Miraidon. And at this point, I think Rillaboom just solo handles this game. One Grassy Glide will be able to knock out Urshifu from this point. And of course, the Iron Treads now locked into high horsepower, especially without the Quark Drive, will not be able to do too much to Rillaboom in return. So a combination of a couple Wood Hammers, maybe you get the Volcarona in here to try and finish off the Fiery Dance as well. But Rillaboom is about to checkmate Francesco in this match.
It is a little awkward though, because with the Volcarona, you have the Electric Seed, and since the Rillaboom is coming out now, you reset the terrain to grass. Miraidon is going to have to take a manual pivot in order to actually get the Volcarona seed active if you want to bank on that electric terrain later.
I think the seed was already consumed anyway, right? It was on the field at the start of the game. So it's not even something you really have to worry about at this point anymore. I think at this point, Eric probably has 5 or 6 different ways he can close out this game. One of them being that fake out the Iron Treads and land this Draco Meteor for another knockout.
Another knockout here for this Miraidon, and the critical hit on top of it
Why not?
is just cherry on top here for Eric's game. Only the Iron Treads remains, and it flinches now. I think Francesco sees the writing on the wall. Eric is at a 2 Pokemon advantage versus this Iron Treads.
Wow, what a great game by Eric. That call with the Draco Meteor really blew this game wide open.
One more Draco Meteor for the road, though, from this Miraidon. It doesn't get the critical hit this time, but you know Francesco's going to give it everything he's got till the very end. A high horsepower is going to end this Miraidon's time in this game, too, as Rillaboom goes for the U-turn. And so we get to see this Volcarona come back out pretty scot-free, and the Rillaboom to come alongside of it to get that fake out to allow this Volcarona to clinch the game.
Because you're just playing it extra safe if you're Eric here. You don't want to maybe swap that Volcarona in on a critical hit high horsepower and lose it before it can make a single attack. It's just making sure that he's covering every single option. At this point, he knows that Francesco has exactly one thing he can be doing. He has one choice to make, and that's which slot to throw the high horsepower in. Francesco now knows he cannot come back. Eric Rios progresses to top 4 at NAIC.
Another top 4 here for Eric, and one step closer to getting back to a potential second international championship win after just a couple of years ago. And, you know, commiserations to Francesco. Made it farther than he ever has at an international championship, and I know it is hard as a top competitor to get this close and not be able to get over that finish line, but congrats.